Okay, but really, have you ever like spent your whole weekend making your to-do list look all pretty and color-coded
Oh my God,
and then
yes.
realize at the end, like, you got nothing done?
Totally.
It's like I feel like sometimes I'm drowning in all these productivity hacks,
Uh-huh.
but I'm not any closer to actually like living a good life.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's what Maria Bowler's book, Making Time, is really getting at.
Yes.
It's not about just doing more things. It's about like crafting a life that feels creative, not just like busy and productive.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even like it's another one of those step-by-step manuals
Right?
with like 1,000 steps to optimize your day.
Yeah.
It's like taking a step back and saying, why are we so obsessed with like doing stuff all the time?
Yeah, it's like it shines a light on what she calls mere doing. Like the things we do just because we feel like we should, not because we actually want to.
Mere doing.
Huh?
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like how much of our lives is just that? Even something simple. Like she talks about in the book, working as a barista.
Right.
She was just like going through the motions. She called it this grayness of tasks.
Yeah, I think that's something we can all relate to.
Totally.
Like we've bought into this idea that we're only worth something if we produce a lot.
Yeah,
If our to-do list is all checked off.
exactly.
But the book is like, what if there's a different way?
Okay, I am so intrigued.
Huh?
Tell me about this different way.
Okay.
So she talks about this idea of undoing.
Yeah.
And honestly, that word like blew my mind. What is undoing?
So it's basically like taking apart all these beliefs we have about productivity, the things that might actually be holding us back.
Okay.
And one of the big ones is laziness.
Oh.
Like, how many times do we call ourselves or someone else lazy
Oh, yeah, all the time.
when really it's just that we don't want to do something that doesn't feel good to us?
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know?
Remember that story about the librarian?
Yes.
In the book, he thought he was lazy
Yeah.
because he didn't have like a full social calendar or whatever.
Yeah, he wasn't out there doing all the things.
But he was so passionate about his work.
Exactly.
Like he was putting so much energy into that.
Right.
It really makes you think differently about like what's actually productive.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how many times we've been wrong about our own resistance.
Yes.
Like when we felt that nope inside, but we ignored it because we felt like we had to do the thing.
Oh, so true.
Yeah.
So if undoing is about taking apart those beliefs,
Right.
then how do we go from that mere doing to something more meaningful?
That's where making comes in.
Okay.
And it's not just about what we get done.
Mhm.
It's about how we feel while we're doing it.
Okay.
Like how we let the actual process of creating something change us.
Ooh, making is really interesting.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, I want to hear a little bit more about the undoing part
Okay.
because it feels so important for getting out of that productivity trap. But what does it actually look like to do that?
Well, it can look like a lot of different things, but usually it starts with questioning our assumptions. So,
Yeah.
for example, she talks about facing our fear of failure.
Oh, gosh.
Like we're so trained to avoid messing up, but what if we just like accepted it as part of being creative?
Whoa. That's
Yeah.
a big shift.
Yeah.
It seems like everything in our culture is about avoiding failure.
Right.
But maybe she's right. Maybe there are things we can learn from our so-called mistakes.
Exactly. And another big part of undoing is about seeing through the illusion of enough.
Mm.
We're always chasing this feeling of having done enough, achieved enough, like we're enough.
Yes.
But she says that that's kind of like a trick.
Yeah.
It keeps us always wanting more, but never really feeling satisfied.
Oh, the enough mirage. I know that feeling so well.
Right.
It's like being on a treadmill where you think, if you just run a little faster, we'll finally get there.
Yeah.
But the finish line just keeps moving.
It does. And that's why undoing that belief is so powerful.
Okay.
It's about realizing that we're already worthy just because we're human.
Right.
It has nothing to do with all the stuff we achieve.
So if undoing is about taking all that apart,
Yeah.
then making must be about building something new in its place.
Yeah.
Something that's more true to who we are.
Yeah.
Like our creative potential.
Making is all about bringing our inner world out into the world
Okay.
through doing things with intention,
Uh-huh.
through creating things that feed our souls
Yeah.
and that connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay. I am so ready to talk about making.
Okay.
What's it actually look like to live like that?
Well, she talks about a few different parts of making.
Okay.
One of the most important is being really present with what we're doing.
Mm.
Like not just checking things off a list,
Right.
but actually enjoying the process of making something
Okay.
and letting ourselves be changed by it.
So it's like slowing down and really paying attention.
Yeah.
like noticing the little details
Uh,
and appreciating the whole journey, not just the end result.
exactly. And it's also about setting intentions that match our values,
Okay.
not just focusing on what we want to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's about asking ourselves why we're doing something
Right.
and making sure it has meaning for us.
Wow. This is making me rethink everything.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in that whole like hustle mentality,
Right.
always trying to get to the next goal.
Uh-huh.
But making sounds so much better,
Yeah.
like more sustainable and way more fulfilling.
It is. And another important part of making is about seeing inspiration as a connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Mm.
It's realizing that creativity isn't something we just come up with on our own,
Uh-huh.
but it's like a force that flows through us.
I love that.
It connects us to all these possibilities.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like we're tapping into this universal well of creativity
Right.
that's available to everyone. So
Yeah.
how do we access that?
That's a great question.
Like how do we open ourselves up to that inspiration?
She talks about that a lot in the book.
Okay.
One of the things she says is that we need to make space for silence and stillness.
Silence and stillness. That sounds almost impossible these days.
know, right?
It's like we're always connected.
Right.
But I can see how quieting all that outside noise
Mm-hmm.
might help us hear our own creative voice more clearly.
Exactly. And it's not just about outside quiet.
Okay.
It's also about quieting our minds. All those thoughts and worries that block our creativity.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's about taking time to reflect, to listen to our intuition,
Yeah,
and to let inspiration come to us naturally.
that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like we need to create that space inside ourselves
Huh.
for creativity to grow.
Exactly.
But that's easier said than done, right?
Definitely, our minds are good at filling every quiet moment with something.
So true.
But there are things we can do to help us create that inner space.
Okay, like,
Things like meditation,
uh,
mindfulness,
yeah.
spending time in nature.
right.
All of those can help us tap into that stillness where creativity lives.
Okay, I'm already feeling inspired.
Good.
But what about those times when we get stuck?
Uh-huh.
Like, what about the fear of failure,
Right.
self-doubt,
Yeah.
creative blocks?
Sure.
Those things are going to happen, right?
Of course.
How do we deal with those?
Well, that's where some of those undoing practices come in.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about seeing failure as a chance to learn
Yes.
and being okay with confusion because it can lead to deeper understanding?
Uh-huh.
Those mindset shifts can really help when we feel stuck.
It's like we need to give ourselves permission to mess up,
Yeah.
to experiment, to
right.
make mistakes,
Mm.
because sometimes those lead to the best breakthroughs.
They do. And it's also important to remember that we're not alone in this.
Yeah.
She talks about how important community is,
Uh,
connecting with other creative people who understand what it's like.
yes.
The ups and downs of creating.
That's so important.
Yeah, it's like having a group of people who get it.
Exactly.
You can cheer us on when we need it
Uh-huh.
and remind us that it's okay to stumble along the way.
Because in the end, making isn't just about creating something new in the world.
Right.
It's about creating a new way of being in the world,
Yeah.
one that values creativity and authenticity and connection.
Absolutely.
I feel like my whole perspective is shifting just from talking about this.
I know, me too.
This book is amazing.
Yeah.
It really challenges how we think about productivity.
Uh-huh.
And it gives us this like soulful, intentional way of living.
It does.
I'd love to hear what our listeners are thinking about all of this.
Me too.
What are some of those mere doing traps you find yourself in?
Right.
And what creative things are you feeling inside,
Yeah.
just waiting to come out?
I really like how she talked about those times when we don't want to do something.
Yeah.
Like that resistance. She said that's like a sign, not something to just ignore.
Oh, interesting.
Like maybe instead of getting mad at myself for procrastinating, it's
Yeah.
a chance to ask myself, why am I avoiding this?
Mm.
Is this really important, or am I just caught up in that mere doing?
Oh, that's such a good point.
Uh-huh.
What if procrastination is actually like a good thing? Like it's protecting us from wasting time on things that don't really matter.
Right.
It's like that part where she talks about our nervous systems being like kids.
Yeah.
We shouldn't yell at them for not being perfect.
Exactly.
We should listen to what they need.
Totally. Instead of forcing ourselves to stick to some strict schedule,
Uh-huh.
maybe we should pay more attention to our energy
Okay.
and realize when we need to rest or just do something completely different.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be human,
Yeah.
with all our weirdness and ups and downs.
Right. Not trying to be some perfect productivity robot.
Exactly. And speaking of perfect, she also says some really interesting stuff about discipline. Like, she's not into being super rigid and controlling.
Right.
She says we should be more focused on what feels alive in us.
Like follow our creative energy.
Sure, it's not about forcing ourselves into a routine just because someone said it's the right way to work.
Right.
It's about finding a structure that actually helps us be creative.
Yeah, that lets our energy flow.
And she says one way to do that is to have more silence and stillness in our life.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Which is like the hardest thing ever these
I
days.
don't know. It's like we're constantly bombarded with stuff.
Emails, notifications, social media.
It's no wonder we can't think straight.
Seriously. But she says creating silence isn't just about turning off our phones.
Yeah.
It's also about quieting our minds.
Right. All those thoughts and judgments that block our creativity.
It's like finding that peaceful place inside
Uh-huh.
where we can connect with our intuition and inspiration.
Exactly. And that might take some practice.
Well, yeah.
Especially at first. We're so used to being busy all the time.
Right.
We might actually feel bored or anxious when we first try to be quiet.
It's like we've forgotten how to just be
Yeah.
without having to do something.
But I love how she talks about boredom as a good thing.
Really?
Yeah, like it's a chance for our minds to wander and make new connections.
It's like those times when you're just staring out the window
Uh-huh.
and it seems like you're doing nothing,
Right.
but your mind is actually working on things in the background.
Exactly. Like you come up with ideas you wouldn't have had otherwise.
It's like in those quiet moments, the creative whispers can finally be heard.
And she also talks about the tough parts of being creative, like the fear of messing up, the pressure to be good,
Oh, yeah, all the time.
and that imposter syndrome.
Ugh, imposter syndrome, the worst.
I know.
It's that voice that tells us we're not good enough.
Yeah, like we're a fake and everyone's going to find out.
But what I love about her approach is that she says those imperfections are okay. They're actually what make our work special. It's like we can be ourselves with all our flaws and quirks.
Uh-huh.
And those are the things that make our creative stuff interesting.
Exactly. And one thing she suggests for dealing with those negative thoughts is to think about failure as a learning experience.
Okay.
Remember that story about the musician who wrote a bad song on purpose?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
He was stuck and couldn't write anything,
Uh-huh.
so he decided to write something terrible.
And what happened?
It actually helped him get unstuck.
Right.
Like he was able to be more creative.
So sometimes we need to give ourselves permission to be bad
Right.
in order to be good.
And she also talks about using imposter syndrome to learn more about ourselves.
Okay.
Like facing our fears and doubts head on,
Uh-huh.
trying to understand where they come from,
Right.
and using that to help us grow creatively.
So instead of trying to shut those voices up,
Yeah.
we listen to them
Right.
and try to figure out what they're trying to tell us.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really helpful.
And that brings us to another important part of the book,
Okay.
the focus on being connected to others.
Oh, yeah.
She reminds us that we're not alone in this creative journey.
Right.
We're part of a bigger creative world,
Uh-huh.
and our connections with others help us grow.
I love that it's like our creativity isn't just for us.
Right.
It's a gift we share with the world.
Uh-huh.
And we get inspiration and support back.
Exactly, and she uses this great analogy to explain it.
What is it?
The mycorrhizal networks.
Rid of those?
It's like this underground network that connects trees,
Oh, cool.
and they share resources and help each other grow.
Wow.
It's like a reminder that we need each other to thrive creatively.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and thinking about that makes me wonder about legacy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what do we want to leave behind?
What kind of mark do we want to make on the world?
Right, and she wants us to think beyond our own lives. Like, what impact will our creative work have on future generations?
It's like realizing that our creativity is part of something bigger.
Uh-huh.
It can inspire others in ways we might not even imagine.
And she shares some great examples of this.
Like what?
There's this story about a teacher
Uh-huh.
who encouraged his student to keep writing,
Oh,
even though the student didn't believe in himself.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like a reminder that even small acts of support
Yeah.
can have a huge impact on someone's creative journey.
It's like we're all connected in this web of creativity.
Exactly.
Each of us adding our own unique thread.
And together we create something amazing.
And one of the best things about the book is that she talks about joy.
Oh, yeah.
Like she says, joy isn't something we get after we achieve something.
Right.
It's part of the creative process itself. So it's not about waiting until we're successful or famous to feel happy. It's about finding joy in the act of creating,
Yeah.
in the simple pleasure of making something new.
And she says that delight can actually help us be more creative.
Really?
Yeah, it helps us get over challenges and stay motivated when things get tough.
It's like when we're feeling good and inspired,
Right.
the work just flows out of us.
Exactly. And it reminds me of another part of the book.
Okay.
It's kind of challenging,
Oh.
but really rewarding.
What is it?
The idea of making with confusion.
Making with confusion. What does that even mean?
It's about those times when we don't have all the answers, when we feel lost or unsure about what we're creating,
Right. Yeah.
instead of trying to force it.
Yeah.
It's about letting go and trusting that the answers will come.
Like giving ourselves permission to explore,
Yeah.
to wander off the path a little.
That's where the magic happens.
And does she give us any tips for dealing with those confusing times?
She does. She says we should ask different questions.
Yeah.
Look at our challenges in new ways and try to find hidden connections and insights.
So it's about being curious.
Yeah.
Approaching things with an open mind.
Right. And that brings us to one of the most powerful ideas in the book.
Okay, what is it?
The idea of making hope.
Making hope?
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. She says that when we create from a place of truth and vulnerability, we show the world what's possible. We give them a spark of hope that can inspire them to create their own meaning and beauty.
It's like by sharing our creative stuff.
Right.
We're not just adding to the noise. We're adding to a collection of hope.
Yeah.
Reminding each other that even when things are dark,
Right.
there's always light and beauty.
And the possibility for something new.
That's a beautiful way to think about creativity.
It is. And it makes me wonder, what seeds of hope are we planting?
Yeah.
What kind of world are we helping to create?
With every painting, every song, every word we put out there.
Those are great questions to think about.
They really are. And they get to the heart of what the book is all about.
Right.
It's not just about creating more things. It's about creating a better way to be in the world.
Exactly.
One that's more meaningful and fulfilling.
And hopeful.
It's about taking back our power to create,
Yeah.
getting off that hamster wheel of productivity, and remembering that we're not just human doings.
Right.
We're human beings with the ability to be creative and connected and joyful. This book is like giving us permission to rethink what success even means.
Right.
Like moving past those old ideas of productivity and finding something deeper. Something that actually makes us feel good.
It is. It's about focusing on the process, not just the product.
Yeah.
About becoming, not just achieving.
And realizing that our creative journey isn't a straight line.
Right.
It's more like a spiral,
Yeah.
with all its twists and turns.
It's about embracing those detours,
Yeah.
those times when things don't go as planned, seeing them as chances to grow and learn, trusting that even our mistakes can lead us somewhere amazing.
And remembering that we're not alone in this.
Exactly.
You know, we have each other, this whole community of listeners.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into making time, what are some of the things that really stuck with you? What parts of the conversation made you think differently about your own experiences?
For me, it's that shift from doing to making.
Yeah.
It's not about giving up on getting things done.
Right.
It's about putting more intention and creativity and joy into everything we do.
And asking ourselves, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Does this align with my values, with what I really care about?
And realizing that making isn't just for artists.
Exactly.
It's something we can do every day in our work, in our relationships, even just in how we spend our free time.
It's about those little moments of creativity that light us up,
Yeah.
like baking bread or writing a letter.
Or even just going for a walk and appreciating nature.
And remembering that creativity is always there. It's not something that runs out.
As long as we make space for it.
This book has really changed how I think about time and effort.
Me too.
And about what I'm capable of creating.
I'm curious to hear what our listeners are thinking.
Yeah, what resonated with you?
What creative sparks are you feeling?
What small acts of making can you do today?
Share your thoughts and experiences with us in the comments.
Let's inspire each other to make time for what matters,
Yeah.
to nurture our creativity, and to bring more beauty and meaning and hope into the world.
And as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
If you enjoyed this episode,
We'd love for you to subscribe, like, and share it with your friends.
until next time, keep making, keep creating.
And keep diving deep.